Welcome to the Joan and Monty show.
This episode of At Home with Joan and Monty's talk show is all about property investment and property development and portfolios.
Joan, how you been? You missed me last week?
I have missed you. We've got some wonderful guests here today. I'd like to introduce our first guest, Ritchie Clapson. He is a qualified structural engineer and director of property CEO.
Thank you for inviting me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Ritchie, how long have you been in the business for?
Well, I look quite young, I know, so this is going to come as a shock to some people, but I've been in the industry now nearly 40 years.
Wow, 40 years.
Yeah, I started in property at the age of 16 as a chartered structural engineer, and later on in that career, I got involved with a lot of developers. And I really decided that area was the more interesting area. So I used to work with a lot of people, a lot of developers in developing buildings out. I still run an engineering company, but I sold that out in 2010, retired at that point, and I've been involved in and around property developing and latterly training property developers.
So yeah, Ritchie, what services do you offer to your clients?
In simple terms, we train them to be developers. I like to say, someone asked me the other day, they said, what do you do for a living now? Because they say I'm retired, Monty, but now I say I change people's lives, which I thought sounded quite good. And I do enjoy that. That's the aspect I like of it. But what we offer to do is we take existing business owners, maybe property investors, landlords, or property professionals, and we take them on a program and then we train them to be property developers. We train them to be independent and go off and develop property in their own right. And I'm talking about developing relatively small scale property, maybe sort of between 5 and 20 units, where they can make a comfortable six-figure sum a year. It's not easy, but in time, that's where they can get to.
The global markets are saying that we're heading for a recession or a Great Depression. So how does that impact on the person who is wanting to start investing in creating a property portfolio?
Well, Joan, really interesting question. I think the interesting thing about that, the answer most people would expect is very different, okay? Because actually it creates opportunity. Not necessarily for someone who's in a bit of a struggle at the moment, and we do appreciate at this current time, a lot of people are struggling significantly. But as a developer, if you're able to get into the market now, and this might seem a bit harsh, but this is the commercial reality, the opportunity is probably one of the best it's ever been for many, many years, certainly as far as I can remember, because property prices are going to be dropping. You know, as the furlough scheme that the government has got is going to be start to pulled away over the coming months, we're going to see more and more businesses flounder and collapse. And that will mean more and more properties will become available on the market. There'll be distressed properties and motivated sellers, which means as developers, we could buy them cheaper. And the interesting thing is that we won't be putting property back into the market for sale because the duration of development is normally 18 to 24 months, probably to 2022. And even some of the big players like Savills and all that are predicting in 2022, early 2022, we will be back to similar to today's values. So you have a chance to buy it cheaper, yet sell at the same price. So it's an opportunity right now, which is bizarre. Might sound a bit harsh, but we always say to students, as long as you don't capitalize on someone else's pain, but if you take a genuine opportunity, you could make a good success at this time.
Well, that's Ritchie, that's really interesting. You say that. I know a lot of people who want to get into property, and there's some people who are thinking about sort of refinancing, you know, their own homes. But what does this new term, what does this mean, mortgage holiday?
Well, mortgage holiday, I think, is not necessarily, Monty, associated with development as such. And I think the downside, if you're thinking of getting into property development and you want to take a mortgage holiday, there is the consideration that one needs to consider is that actually does affect your credit rating. It will be on your credit file as an imprint in some description, or so I'm led to believe. Now, mortgage holidays are set up for people that genuinely need them. Unfortunately, the language that's used by the government in terms of mortgage holiday, a lot of people think, well, I'll just have one. Our strong advice would be if you want to get into property development and investing and you don't need a mortgage holiday, then avoid it. Because when you go out there and you're looking for corporate investment or looking for corporate funding or even trying to raise private investment or funding, then you're going to have that potential imprint on your register there. So you don't really want to be doing that. And actually, just as an aside to tack on to the end of the answer for that question, if you're getting into development, commercial development, you can raise 70% of the funding to purchase and 100% to develop, providing you're doing schemes that have either got planning or what's called permitted development rights, which is a form of planning. You have to put about 30% in, but there are ways you can pull that together through private funding. So it's not always necessary to remortgage and go into development. And as I say, coming back to that earlier comment, be very, very careful about that imprint on your credit file.
You recommend that to go into development, you need a minimum of 30% deposit. Is that a safety? Is that the safety net you would advise students and young property developers?
No, I don't think, Monty, the safety net is the right term. Okay, it's the requirement. So if you want to go and buy an existing building, an office building that you might want to do something with, or a bit of land, it's the requirement from the commercial funders to come and back you that you have 30% investment in there. There are ways, though, that you can raise that from private investors. You have to have some skin in the game, as they say. You have to have some investment of some cash to some description. If you haven't got a penny, you're probably going to struggle. It's possible, but very, very hard. So providing you've got some money, you can raise a lot of that. So 30% that you might need, you might be able to raise 10% of that, 10% of that out of your own money, and the rest of the 90% of the 30, if that makes sense. A few maths on the show here. You can do that. But I think in terms of mitigating risk, that's about how you go into it and actually getting the right team and support mechanisms around you.
Thank you so much for that, Ritchie, that clarification there. Now, at this time, I'd like to introduce Tarinee. Tarinee is a mother of two, and she has interest in the property market. Okay, can you tell us, when did you get involved in property development?
In 1998, actually, just after I graduated. And it's kind of, I become accidental landlord. My ex-mother-in-law, she get herself into trouble. And one day, without me knowing anything, the bailiff came into the house and knocked on the door and, demand the money and want to ask us to leave. So it's kind of shock. And I only been in the country for 4 years. So I end up have to buy the property of her using my own credit card. So that's my first property that I bought in London. So yeah, that's quite a while ago, over 20 years ago.
Okay. So you are an accidental landlord and property developer all in one.
That's what I first started with, yes.
First of all, tell us a bit about Freedom Wealth Builder. What does your company do, and what services do you offer your clients?
At Freedom Wealth Builder, our mission is to help entrepreneurs, working professionals, for example, doctors, nurses, and all the key workers, dentists, and also parents. I'm a parent myself, to build their legacy wealth and to have the financial freedom. So what we're offering is, I think, from the back end from Ritchie. So Ritchie helping people to learn to become a developer. I'm providing opportunity for investor to come in to invest into our project, and the return on investment is depend on how much they want to get involved into the project, how big is the funds, and also how long the money will be staying there. So that's what we offer, the opportunity to invest in property projects.
It's amazing what you're doing, especially there's a lot of people who, second language is English. They would think we may need a lot of money. We need a lot of money to start up as a property developer. Do you need that, or are there other ways to get into the business?
I think people have to understand that property business is the medium term to long term business. So if you want, for example, your goal is to build the large property portfolio, you need a plan, and you need to work toward your plan. You need to learn how to walk before you run. So if you want to start in property investments, but you don't have much cash available, maybe you can start by teaming up with people who has, or helping people selling and buying their property and earn commission. Save up your cash until you're able to invest that cash into your own business. So no, you don't need, I think it's more of the mindset. That's what I first thought as well that you need to have a huge amount of money, you know, to start with the property business. No, you don't. It's the same concept, isn't it? If you want to go to the moon, you can't just look up on the sky and then jump to go to the moon. You have to start by building up your rocket first, right? And learn how to operate that rocket. It's the same thing. You need to have a plan.
I think it's absolutely brilliant what you're saying. And, you know, it's the attitude, it's the mindset of an individual. Ritchie, I'd like to ask you a question. Do you train a lot of people to get into property, but they don't have the funds for it?
I think if I answer that in twofold, Monty, there, it's a good question, because I think the question there is always about money. If you haven't got any money, you're going to struggle. Okay, so you need some money of some sort, and there are always upfront costs. So there is always going to be an element of paying maybe some valuation costs, maybe getting some consultants involved in the early stages. So you need a few £1,000s around you to do that. The other important thing to add to it, if you're going to go out there and borrow money, and I'm talking about development where you're going to be borrowing maybe £750,000 to £1.5 million, maybe, you need a good net asset statement, i.e. you need a good bit of financial positioning behind you. So if you rent a home, you've got no other investments, you're probably going to struggle a little bit. If you've actually got a home which is not necessarily unencumbered, but not an overly large mortgage, then you're in a reasonably strong position.
When would you think about investing?
So I think you've got to decide in your own mind when the time is right. Now, the thing I perhaps suggest people should consider, and most of us do not do this, okay, is what do we need? What are our future plans? What is enough for us to retire on? Because most people, unfortunately, go through life and they look at the next biggest thing in their life, which could be the next holiday, perhaps buying the car, buying the house. They don't tend to think bigger picture of how am I going to retire? What is in my pension pot? What is enough to retire on? And most of us don't answer that. So if there's one thought anyone take away from this show today, from my perspective, I say, work out, have you got enough or not? And if you haven't got enough, then to answer that question, Joan, now is the time to start thinking about investing property, because property is, and Tali will know this is one of the few mediums that people can come into outside of this area. You know, if I suddenly wanted to become a cricketer, I just couldn't do it. It would take me a lot of effort to do it. Actually, you can get into property development relatively easy. So if you haven't got enough, work that calculation out first of all, then now you should start thinking about it.
Yeah. So Tarinee, you're not just into property, you're also an author of 3 books.
Yes.
And tell us one of the ones which have done very successful.
I think my second book actually is called Happiness, Health and Wealth. And yes, you can do it all. In the big bracket, it doesn't mean that you have to do all in once. You have to have plan and, you know, strategy to achieve it one by one. You have to know how to prioritize. The tips I want to give is, which is apply in not even the book business, property, in every other business, is how you're going to speed up your success. You need to learn how to leverage so that your success doesn't depend purely on your own resources. You need to know how to leverage other people money, other people time, knowledge, experience, and their brand. That's what we have here. So if we're reaching out and cooperate with other people, we have a greater chance to success than rather than we do it on our own.
Provided that you've also spoke a lot about legacy wealth. How do you go about building legacy wealth?
Legacy wealth, for me, is mean a good fortune that you want to pass on to our children, right? The wealth can be in wisdom, in love, in support, and also in financials. As the parents, I'm sure everyone want to make sure that our children have the best future and they're able to do what they love to do without feeling stressed or worrying about the money. So how do we do to build our own legacy wealth? You need to work on yourself first, right? Ritchie said, you need to actually start from yourself. What you want to achieve, what you want to become, what kind of lifestyle would you like to have, and when is the time scale? Because like in property, there are many strategies. So if you don't know where you want to go and how you're going to achieve it, you're going to be all over the place. anything shiny coming around, you're going to run after it, and you're going to be end up confused.com. So working on yourself, what you want to achieve, how you're going to get there, and find someone that have more experience and be there, achieve it before you, helping you, and make sure that you only work with people that you like and trust, and make sure that they work and they help you to achieve your goal, not only to achieve their goal. This is quite important.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys both actually this question. How do you develop trust with people that you're going to work with?
For me, trust is the most important thing. If people, intend to screw you over, they will find the chance anyway to screw you over. So trust is the main important thing. Maybe some circumstance coming in that the business not go as planned. But if you can trust that person and they have their integrity, even though they gone bust, they will find any means to work up, to make it up to you. That what lasts in a business is not only a business. For me, when you get into the business with someone, you go through life together. You might go up, you might go down, but can we stick together? Can we work it out? Can we make sure that we come right okay at the end? Maybe we get burned a bit, that's fine, but we learn and we grow together. And that is only based on trust, nothing else.
The big thing I would say on trust, to add into this, because people could enter this industry very quickly. And as Tani's talking about, she got her fingers burnt a few times. There are a lot of sharks in this industry. I always say there's two things you want to check for. One is values. Okay. Do you have the same values? Do you think in the same way? And are you in the same social circles? Because if you're in the same social circles and someone, treats you wrong, it's more likely that you can actually have an influence back onto them and what they do. If you work with someone who's way outside your circles, and indeed you don't have the same values, you're probably on a hiding to nothing. So please be very careful if you're coming to this industry, and do all the due diligence you can. As Tani said, there should be no reason not to do due diligence.
Yeah. So Ritchie, you've also been on the committee, on the Olympics committee 2012 on the engineering department. So the government appointed you for that.
Well, that came from my days at Monty as an engineer, as a chartered engineer. So my background is I'm professionally qualified. So we as a company at that time were invited by the government to be the peer review engineers. So the Olympic Stadium, the National Aquatics and the Velodrome was designed by other consultants. And we were then asked to check their work. The reason we got involved in that, and we tried to position ourselves to be asked, which we were, was that I was actually growing a business for sale at that time. My engineering company, Monty, I started in 98. I had a 10-year plan to build it and sell it, which we did. We sold it in 2010. So we sold it just before the Olympics. But I had to get prestigious projects in to get our name out there and help sell the business and help get the multiplier up. And we were a world-class team, but we were not the largest team in the world by any stretch of the imagination. We had a team of 35 professional people. And so we went for that peer review engineers. So we positioned ourselves, if the best people in the world would have been designing the UK Olympic stadiums and aquatics and velodrome in 2012. But the people that were better than them had to check them. And indeed, there were various things that had to be adjusted and changed. So we positioned ourselves, we chose that work to position ourselves as a company, be the best of who we were in the world. So we were world class. And when I came to sell that business, I sold it to a large PLC for a significant 7-figure sum. It largely was based on our reputation and experience. So, and yeah, as an interesting thought there for some of your viewers, if you're growing businesses and you're thinking about it, you have to have what's often called a unique selling point, a USP. You've got to be unique. We were the only people in the world checking those stadiums. So we were unique. We were the top of our game. So a little bit of interesting there. If you're in business and you want to be doing something different, if you're doing something the same as everyone else, you're going to struggle. So if you're going to come out of this recession in a better place, think of your business and think of doing something different. Think of having something unique about your business. Otherwise, you're just going to fade in the grayness.
Are there any other ways, Tarinee, where people could grow their property investment, like starting from small and then going up?
As I mentioned before, if you don't have the capital upfront, You can connect people to people, right? Through networking, you can connect solicitor to surveyor, buyer to mortgage broker, and then you can earn the commission or introductions fee for that. Or maybe you know some auntie that want to sell their house or want to let their house, and they're not a technical savvy. You can help them to put on a spare room, you know, go on Airbnb, and you can end up become a property management for her property. There are many ways that you can start small first until, you know, you can accumulate your own cash and do your own things. So don't wait until you got everything in place. You can start now.
Well, that's fascinating, actually, because it's what impresses me about both of you guys. One is providing the platform, already a success story, but developing more hungry property people, and you are helping women to go say, right, you can become as successful as men.
Can I just add to that, Monty, as well? We, as we take in new students, I would say 30, if not closer to 40% of people that we take in are either single females or females that are part of a partnership team, whether that be a husband or a partner. So we see a lot of professional ladies coming into this industry. And one of the interesting things about that is this industry and development, particularly, Tani's much more in the investment sector, but in development, it requires 4 key skills to get into. Okay, management skills, decision-making skills, organizational skills, and the most important of all, which outweighs all the others, is people skills. And I'm afraid to say it, as sat here, but I'm not male chauvinist. The women have better people skills in the majority of the time. They're able to be calm and communicate much easier. So communication skills is the number 1 skill. So the door is very wide open to, as you say, unfortunately, it is a very male-dominated industry, but the door is wide open. So if you're a lady out there and you want to get into this industry, it is easier, if not, you know, for you guys than it is for the, you know, for the fellas to get in.
Tarinee, I'd like to ask you, with all the knowledge that you have now, what would you have done differently in regards to investing in a property?
Know what I know now, what would I have done differently? I think before I get into any business, including property, as I mentioned before, I would start on myself first. But back then, I'm quite young and naive. So when I see something that sounds promising, I jump into it. Instead of working on myself, who I want to become, you know, what is my goal, what is my immediate goal, medium-term goal, and long-term goal, and how do I going to achieve that, and what kind of lifestyle I want to have. And, you know, when I want to achieve it, because not every strategy or every business serves your purpose. Like I'm a single mom with 2 young children. Before, when I heard of rent-to-rent strategy, where you can take over other people's property and then subletting it legally to get the extra income, I jump into it for 2 years, and it doesn't work for me because I'm a single mom with 2 young kids. Every time I go out showing people around, I have to pay babysitter to looking looking after my children. That doesn't work. And then I find out in a hard way that this strategy doesn't work. So know what I know now. Work on yourself first. What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? People saying they want $1 million. Do you really want $1 million? And do you really want a large portfolio? Do you want to travel all the time? You want to go out all the time? You need to ask yourself what you really want. And again, working with someone that you can trust, because otherwise they will screw you over. I got my shoulder chopped off, finger burned so many times because I'm so naive, thought that people will work on my interest. No, they're not. They're working on their own interest. So due diligence is very important. Check around. And nowadays so good because everything is online. You can ask Ritchie, you can ask me, you can ask a lot of experts. Have you heard of that person? What kind of reputation they have? Always do your groundwork before you get yourself into, problem or asset. Either way, then you need to do your due diligence.
With reference to due diligence, what about the investors and them doing their due diligence and spreading the risk?
Joan, if your question is about how would you spread risk in property, I think that's a mix of investments, but actually you should look beyond that and you should spread risk beyond that. So property is one investment strategy, but actually if you build up wealth, then you should be thinking about other investment areas of wealth. Dare I say stocks and shares or whatever, but you should be looking at other areas. I think in terms of property itself, the development journey gives you liquid cash. It can generate significant six-figure sums, even at the small scale level. And what I would often say to investors, then keep it simple, okay? Use that liquid cash to build your, what I'd often call a vanilla buy-to-let, a straightforward family buy-to-let home that you can just put a family in, they stay there 6, 12, maybe longer in terms of months. And just have a nice, straightforward, simple investment. And you can build your portfolio really quick from a development avenue. I think in terms of mitigating risk in the development arm, because that's obviously the area I work in, I tell people to keep small scale, keep relatively small projects, and do large, a big amount of small projects rather than one big project, because that mitigates your risk as well. Because one thing's for sure, development, if you get into development, is extremely risky. So you need to always mitigate your risk.
That's brilliant, Ritchie. Yeah. A lot of people ask me the question, is this an asset? Is this a liability? What's the difference? Actually, that's the question to both of you guys.
Asset is what going to bring you more money. Liability is going to drain out your money. So if you not choose your investments properly, you thought it's an asset. It might become your burden. When I first started, 10, 15 years ago, back then is economy just crashed in 2009. And their strategy that they taught back then is buy as many as you can. Doesn't matter that the mortgage cannot support itself. It's going to go up. So I just gone mad. The first year I bought 12 property. I just bought everything I see, or not even see. I just buying it, seeing from the figure. But that I thought that it's going to become my asset. It's end up become my liability. So you need to invest well. You need to make sure that you make money when you buy, not you make money when you sell. Make sure you have your safety net, especially now with the COVID lockdown. We don't know how long the economy is going to go down. So like Ritchie mentioned before in other property mastermind, instead of 20%, 25%, now we need to look at having a safety net, at least 20 to 30% profit return on your investments to support the elements of the risk there. So that's what my explanation about asset or liability.
Arnie said there, an asset is something that you own that you could liquidate and receive cash for. So think about it that. Could I sell it and could someone pay me some money and I could have cash in my pocket? Yes, that's an asset. A liability is when you owe someone something. And that comes back to good and bad debt, okay? So if you're investing and then you're going to borrow money to develop to get a bigger return, obviously doing that carefully and mitigating your risk and understand what you're doing. So please don't go out there anyone off the back of this and just start investing. Then you're obviously going to have potentially good debt, which will take you forward. I think the more important thing to think about, I just very briefly mentioned it earlier when we were talking about borrowing money to get into development, is what is your net asset position? So very simply, anyone could do this after listening to this show. Take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. On the left, write everything that you own and what it would be worth if you sell it. Your house, your cars, your jewelry, anything, your insurance bonds, everything. And then right on the right-hand side, everything you owe, your mortgage, your car loan, the insurance figures you're paying or whatever, and top that up. At the bottom, you'll have a net asset position. That ultimately is your assets. That's what you've got. If you had to sell everything, take all the cash, what have you got left? For a lot of people, that's quite a surprising task. So maybe there's a little exercise to go and do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that seems like a really good task to do.
That is a very good idea. Yes, yes. And now in closing, Ritchie, I'd like to ask you, after the lockdown, what are you going to do differently with regards to property investment?
I think probably largely after lockdown, if personally, what will I do? I probably get out and do a lot more speeches on the road, which I enjoy. As you can tell, I'm quite shy and retiring, but I do quite like talking out there and talking to groups of people. We were doing a lot of that before lockdown. So from a very personal point of view, it'd be great to get out and get some interaction back out there. I think largely, though, as property developers, nothing should change. You are able to do this with all the technology that's out there. You're able to progress your journey in property development right now. You know, we train people online. We have a digital platform which is all like open university learning, so people can learn that way. So largely things shouldn't be different. The only thing that perhaps will really change for property investors, and we don't do a huge amount of developing ourselves. The majority of my time, we talked about purpose earlier. Remember Tarinee talked about purpose and what's really important in your life. One thing I wish I'd realized 10 years ago is actually I enjoy training people more than I do developing. And that's really important. I really enjoy talking and training people. And actually with developers, it's really good after lockdown. The thing they can do is go out and build those relationships with not only the private investors, the commercial investors, and the agents that are going to bring on the opportunities. So I think after lockdown, more opportunity to build those relationships, which have suffered. Although we're doing our best to keep them up, they have suffered over this time.
How can people contact you?
Simple terms, you can see the logo behind me, propertyceo.co.uk. If you pop onto that website, there's all sorts of resources on there. There are contact details on there. There's access on there to free webinar shows that we do about property. Tarinee said earlier, you know, indulge yourself in some of this stuff, find out who's in the industry. So just pop onto our website. Everything you need will be on there, and you're more than happy to contact me on there. If you mention that you've been on the Joan Monty show and you'd like to contact me through that, put that in the message, and the team will short circuit that through to me.
Tarinee?
You can find my information from my website, freedomwealthbuilder.com. And also I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So all the contact details there. You can email me, text me, or give me a call. Let's have a chat to see how I can support you to build your legacy wealth.
Yeah, Tarinee and Ritchie, thank you very much, for coming on the Joan Monty show. I thought your advice was very useful and very beneficial. Any tips you've got for our listeners, useful nuggets that they can take away?
A couple of final tips for you. Absolutely decide what it is you need to go forward in doing. Okay, I talked about what's enough for you to get to that final point, which might be retirement. Work out what enough is. Okay, that's massively important. Secondly, I'd bring that back and decide what your purpose is in life, what it is you enjoy doing. Because if you don't enjoy doing anything, you're not going to get anywhere. Okay, and then the third and final thing is, this is really important. Okay, yesterday's gone, it'll never come back. Time is far, far more important than money. So actually just enjoy the journey, but decide now. If you're going to do something, you want to change something in your life, decide now, because yesterday's gone and today has gone. So time will never come back. So make decisions and move forward.
That's very good tip, actually, Ritchie. You want to become success or not, right? You need to make that decision that I want to become successful, and you need to make commitment to that. And a lot of people fail or they give up before they reach anything because they don't know the true reason why they need to do what they do, right? If you don't know your reason, look around you. Is your children need you to provide a better future for them or not? You know, you need to do it for yourself, for your children, for your family. Find your why, and that's going to keep you going. Without the reason why you need to do what you need to do, you're going to give up, because things is going to be hard. It's going to be hard, I can guarantee you that. But if you have a strong reason that you cannot allow yourself to fail, then that will keep you going. And reach out to the expert. There are many people like this platform. There are many people that willing to support you and help you to achieve your goal. So reach out for the help, and together we will achieve whatever that you want to become and what you want to have.
I was going to say all that as well.
And I'd like to thank all our guests, Ritchie and Tarinee, and my co-host, Monty. Have a wonderful time, and join us next time for At Home with Joan and Monty. Bye-bye from us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.